I have seen those same intangibles, and the things that I always look to are self-awareness and curiosity. Um, Especially for people coming out of school or coming into an entry-level position, recognizing that you don't know what you don't know, and being curious enough to bridge the gap of those deficiencies to a point where at least where it becomes a part of your skill set eventually. I think is are the two intangibles I always look for younger people coming into the industry, and especially as it related to how I developed in my career. I know I walked into your doors and thought I'm just going to do everything I can. That was my philosophy going in, was do everything I can, work on as many pieces of business as possible. I am 23 years old and I have no other commitments in my life. This is what I want to learn and what I want to understand and stretch and grow into.
All right, we are back. Welcome to another episode of Over a Pint, where we focus on the fast-paced, never-changing world of marketing, told through the eyes of industry veterans with decades of in-the-trenches of experience. No theory here on this show. This is real-world practical experience told to you by those that have been there, and that always includes our guests. So grab a pint of your favorite local brewski or whatever your choice of drink may be, and join us for the show. As always, I am joined by my co-host, Mr. Pat McGovern, new biz director at Citra, an award-winning digital shop in the 3rd Ward. Say hello, Pat.
Hey, everybody. Hey, Mark. Thanks for being on the pod.
And I'm Kurtl, vice president at Celtic, a full-service ad agency in Milwaukee's historic 3rd Ward neighborhood. So Pat, are you excited about 2023?
Yeah, I'm very excited. What's that?
As it pertains to the podcast.
Dude, sure we were just talking about this before we came on. We've got some great guests, the current one included. I'm pumped about what we have coming up, and it's just cool, man. Looking back, and it's like we've had a lot of cool guests on, and we're gonna have a lot of cool other guests on. So I'm really excited about the pod and where it's going.
I can feel the energy already coming from you, Pat.
So,
I know
you're right.
I know you are excited. So, yeah, we have had some great guests on. We've had some great guests on over the past 2.5 years, and definitely as we kickstarted 2023, we've had some great guests coming out of the gates. I'm excited about some of the future guests that are coming on. And you're right, Pat. That starts today with Mark. So we are joined by Marc Bennett, the integrated marketing manager at Johnsonville. Pat, I know you like brats. That I know for sure. But I gotta tell you, I love brands like Johnsonville, just in general. Just
why is that?
Like, well, it's just, let's check the box. It's a tasty product, and I kid around. We all like brats. Check the box. But I like the vibe of brands like this. You've got a family business, values, a pioneer in the industry. Just they're obsessed with their product, as they like to say, sausage obsessed. I just think it's a cool story, and I love hearing about brands like this. And as the advertising geek that I am, I still remember the ad campaign. Charlie Murphy's cooking Johnsonville brats, and I saw it in the LinkedIn string. Someone was asking about that, but I remember that, and I thought it was, to this day, it just resonates with me. So it's something that I'm very excited to talk to Mark about. But full disclosure, I've known Mark for a few years now. We actually worked together for a bit, but we wanted to bring him on because he's got a fantastic and impressive story to share. In addition to having some great advertising agency experience, which he'll get into, he brings a lot of client and brand perspective to the table too. So he knows the ins and outs of both sides of the table. I'm trying to think back. Personable, smart, witty, creative, strong communicator, both verbally. He's shaking his head. So this is where we say nice things about you, Mark. So just go with it. Just enjoy it. No, but it's all serious. A strong communicator verbally, and also with the pen or with the stroke of a key in today's world. But he's got a lot of great intangibles and soft skills, and I think that's probably served him well in his career. So let's get him on right now. Mark, welcome to Over a Pint.
Oh, Hi guys. Oh, I thought we were done after that. That was
No, well, we can be. We can just say nice things about you, and you can feel great about yourself for the rest of the day. I don't care.
Good stuff.
Cool.
I think you got more left in the tank. So, Mark, before we get going, it is called Over a Pint for a reason. We like to kind of share with our listeners and our viewers what everyone is enjoying. In this case, it's a Friday afternoon. Mark, what do you got?
Well, I'm one of those IPA snobs.
Nice.
So right now I have the last of the big heavy IPAs in my fridge, which is a Black Stack from Minneapolis. It's called Citra, but Make It Pop. I thought the Make It Pop would make sense here for this type of advertising conversation. We always talk about making the logo bigger. But yeah, I'm a big IPA snob, and so that's what I'll be enjoying with you guys today.
Very cool. Pat, what do you got?
I've got a Modelo Negra. Kurt, you've had a number of these on the show. You've wet my whistle for that, so that's what I'm enjoying today. Cheers.
We're still giving John Alvarado love. We had the John Alvarado on about a year ago. He was the head guy on marketing for Modelo, Pacifico, and Corona. He was a great guest. You know, Mark, I'm with you. I do like IPAs as well. This is actually from Roadhouse Brewing Company out in Wyoming. It's their
I've had that.
Wilson. Have you had that one before?
Yeah.
Love it. We have a client out in Wyoming that turned me on to this brew. I'm hooked. I love it. If anyone's coming in from Wyoming or coming this way from Wyoming, let me know. It's a great brew. So
Kurt,
anyway,
I'm gonna tell you the IPA obsession probably began for me at the Outdoor Retailer Show in Salt Lake City, Utah, when we were out there with Pharmacal, Wisconsin Pharmacal, and it was just because every one of those booths that we were in would close at 3 o'clock and then tap their IPA kegs, and then we would get to sample those. And at that point in time, at my age, I hadn't had a lot of those, and that was probably the moment for me.
You were hooked. You were feeling pretty happy by it. Yeah, you're right. 3 o'clock is when the happy hour started. So by 3:15, a lot of us were feeling pretty happy because there was some high octane. It was fun.
And if you recall, I was wearing a giant can of bug spray costume for most of the day.
Yeah, that's right.
Walking around that booth. So a beer after that was a refreshment that I cannot replicate.
We had a client who was in the bug spray business, and so they did a cross country road trip from the East Coast, Midwest, wherever, into the Outdoor Retailer Show. Yeah, that's right. Mark was a trooper, took a hit for the team, but it was a good time. Day. It was a sweaty day. So anyway, good deal. Well, it's good to have you on, and we're going to jump right into it. And the best way, I think, to start a story is to start from the beginning. The humble beginnings, if you will. So, Mark, if you would just briefly give us the 101 on Marc Bennett. Where you came from and how you got to be where you are today. Just kind of start to set it up a little bit for us.
I'll do my best.
Right.
So yeah, I've born and raised in Wisconsin, and started my professional career from an educational standpoint at Marquette here in Milwaukee. Before that, I lived in Appleton. That's where I grew up, and so came to Milwaukee for school and started studying in the business school. Started taking a bunch of courses with statistics in it, and my GPA started to suffer. And then I decided that maybe journalism would be the right approach for me. And then I took a class where I did nothing but edit grammar for an entire hour, and I thought that wasn't very fun. And found myself in the advertising major. Found that I enjoyed what I was hearing, and I might have actually been good at what I was saying. And found myself sort of on that track pretty quickly. And then made my way, my first job coming out of college was actually with Kurt and Brian at Celtic in an account management function. And at the time, I don't think I even knew what account management was, but I knew that I wanted to get into the business, and I wanted to work for clients and work in a business that was interesting to me. And that's what kept me going. And like I said earlier, I did just about everything I think I could for Celtic, at least within my capacities, from managing social communities to working with clients and budgets to being in bug spray costumes. And and I thought it was a really great kickoff to my career. And I went from Celtic to Kramer Krasselt, which is not far from where both of you guys are in the Third Ward, and got into a lot more of a bigger agency experience, if you want to call it that. Still pretty small, mid-size agency relative to the big ones, but definitely into some more of that more traditional structure of an agency, and worked there for 6 years, and then found my way to Sausage Land.
Good foundation. So, you get dropped off at Marquette, and one of the questions I was going to ask you, and you kind of answered it. It's like you kind of went into this not really having any idea you were going to trip into this industry. It was kind of like a very typical story for most students.
I knew I was a good writer. I did a lot of that in high school, wrote for the paper, and did a lot of those functions. It was probably the only A+ I got in high school was creative writing. And then so I knew there was something in that space for me, but there was a perception in my mind's eye that business was what I wanted to get into. I didn't know nearly as much about it, obviously, as I started to jump into those courses and started to see things like accounting looming, and realized it wasn't really what I was passionate about at that moment. And so found my way into continuing with journalism. But the different thing is I worked for the school paper at Marquette, but I sold ads instead of wrote. And that gave me a lot more of what I would call client-facing experience and working with other people to better understand a variety of businesses. And so from there, it got me more on this track of maybe this advertising industry is interesting to me, and I could make a career of it.
Mark, just out of curiosity, do you still write at all? Do you find any outlets that you plug into?
Yeah, interestingly enough, and this is probably jumping ahead in the story a bit, but in the middle of COVID, we parted ways from our agency of record at the time for amicable reasons, which we can get into later. But actually found ourselves in a position where we weren't looking for additional agency help because we just couldn't. We weren't really needing to generate a lot of creative campaigns, and my coach and I did most of the writing of all the advertising for Johnsonville from basically early 2021 until about a year ago. So yeah, we do have plenty of outlets for doing writing.
Very
cool.
I
do quite a bit. Within our team, there's a lot of different creative projects that at Johnsonville we don't necessarily reach out to agencies for help on, because we have writers that just can, really be able to take the skinny on what we need and just write a few lines or testing some positioning statements and stuff like that. So yeah, there's plenty.
Cool.
So when you hit on the head, when you were with us, you did a lot of things. You wore a lot of hats. And I got to tell you, I think that happens at a lot of agencies. Big, my experience had large agency. I was doing a lot of different things, but it seems like it's probably was a recipe that started to serve you well. So you go to Kramer Krasselt. What were you in a traditional setting? Were you traditional account, or what were you, where did you land over there?
I was in a traditional account management role, which is funny, Kurt, because I did so many things, and I think it was a little bit of a double-edged sword, because it got me to a place of humility early, and I was able to be I'm inexperienced in everything, so I tried to get a little bit of experience in everything. But when I got into the larger agency setting, you start to get into that more traditional structured role, and so a lot of the things that you would have me do out of just base of necessity, we would have a department for that. And so there were a little growing pains with that. But it's still, I think what ended up being the better use of it was just my interest and curiosity to sort of get involved in everything and ask a lot of questions. And I find that even with the most creative people, the most experienced people, being in the room to ask good questions and to get a good response from them is a great way to earn the respect of those team members. So it was a more traditional role. It was more client facing. It was more management of the overall budget and plan and process. But I definitely needed that education to better understand creative development on a step-by-step basis. That was the education I got there for sure.
I think just knowing or having the experience of working with you and just hearing a little bit more about your story, that blur that you had where you were touching a lot of different things, I still say to this day, I think it benefits a lot of people when you have the ability to kind of touch a lot of different bases and bring different perspectives. I saw that in my agency experience where at a larger shop where folks, it was very much structured like, I'm done. Now it's on to Mark. Now it's on to Pat. But if you could kind of weave in and out and had a little bit more of those move at speed skills, that helped you a lot.
Yeah.
Mark, so as you look at your agency experience and you look at the skill set you had and some things you were doing, I also know that at one point in time, this still might be the case. You were involved with students, like you worked with kids at Marquette student. Is that still the case?
Yeah. Not as much anymore. No, but I did do part of the mentor program at Marquette. I was a mentor for a few years, most of it at my time at Celtic. And that frankly was a little bit of a pay it forward piece because the mentor that I had at Marquette knew, I believe, Brian Meehan, and actually made the introduction. So cool. That was part of what I was definitely interested in doing, at least in those first few years after school. But I stay in touch with some of the mentees that I work with and have seen them grow in their careers.
That's fantastic. And what, in terms of the skill set that's coming out where you see a lot of these students, what skills, in your opinion, are critical for some of these students when they're coming out? Because obviously there's a curriculum, we're going to take courses, but what are some of the key things you think, in your opinion, that maybe are taught in the classroom or not, that if you had to give them advice, it's like, this is gonna help you?
Yeah. So I think we've seen a few people come through our doors, and we've seen the good and the bad as it relates to interns, temps, new hires. I guess, I thought about this question a little bit, and there's the intangibles that have kind of always stayed the same. I don't know if there's a new skill set that I've noticed, but I have seen those same intangibles. And the things that I always look to are self-awareness and curiosity, especially for people coming out of school or coming into an entry-level position, recognizing that you don't know what you don't know, and being curious enough to bridge the gap of those deficiencies to a point where at least where it becomes a part of your skill set eventually. I think are the two intangibles I always look for younger people coming into the industry, and especially as it related to how I developed in my career. I know I walked into your doors and thought, I'm just going to do everything I can. That was my philosophy going in, was do everything I can, work on as many pieces of business as possible. I am 23 years old and I have no other commitments in my life. This is what I want to learn and what I want to understand and stretch and grow into. And I felt like that benefited me. And it made me even more curious as I go and I learn more and I get more experience and I know more. I'm sort of, I guess, addicted to wanting to know more.
Fair enough. I think it goes back to, I think that's a great answer. I do think too, soft skills, like, the curiosity and work hard. But I tell you, it's like, we see that too with, folks coming in, and you see that sometimes with newer hires.
Yeah.
But if you can appreciate and learn some of those soft skills, specifically how to deal with people verbally. I mean, some people are just scared to death. That helps. And obviously that was something that you never had an issue with. All right. So you've worked on a few pieces of business at different agencies. Share some of the cooler things you've done. I mean, because we want to, what if you had to look at on the agency side, give us an example of something that you look back, you say, damn, that was pretty cool, and why? Something you're really proud of.
Yeah. So at CK, I'll say a couple things. I mean, the bug spray one, I refer back to the bug spray thing more than probably most other pieces of business I've ever worked on, mostly because you live your life through casual conversations, and that's just objectively funny.
Yeah.
But as it relates to some of the work that I'm proud of being a part of, at CK, we worked on a company called, well, it wasn't really a company, it was a checkoff campaign. And a checkoff campaign is a term that, you would hear for like got milk or beef, it's what's for dinner, but our client was paper and packaging. So the collective industry of paper manufacturers, Georgia Pacific, as an example, was a member of the paper and packaging board. And so we through a new business pitch, we got a brief from this company about promoting the benefits of paper and packaging in our day-to-day lives. And the creative team came up with a really wonderful campaign called How Life Unfolds. And it was a three TV spot integrated piece of creative that I was really proud to be a part of. The campaign was wonderful. It was really, really touching. It hit on a lot of the insight that was derived in the brief, and it was a pleasure to be a part of it. And mostly it was like the first example of a really, really big production that I was on. And so it was the first experience I was able to get for it. And it was very memorable in that regard. Some of the other cooler things, I say this, I picked this not necessarily because it was cool, but more or less that it was a lesson. I worked on a lot of power sports at my time at CK. At the time, we worked with Bombardier recreational products. So I worked on Evinrude outboard motors my entire time at CK, as well as Can-Am Spider motorcycles. And on the cover of that is an inherently cool client to work on, and it was fun. We got to go, shoots out in the Gulf of Mexico, being on motorcycles out west, tons of fun personally. And the work was great, and we were always a fan of the work that we made, but it was a challenging client in a lot of ways. And it was an example of, just because you have a cool client doesn't mean that the grass is greener where you think it's cooler. And it was indicative of the challenges that representing a third party have when working with a publicly traded company that can take strategy or even campaigns and completely change or cancel it if the quarterly numbers don't meet their expectations. So those are two, from my time at CK that were very memorable to me. I don't know if I answered the cool question, but they were very memorable.
Stuck
and I
with you.
think the work always spoke for itself. I mean, even right now at Johnsonville, we've done a lot with the American Cornhole League as a sponsorship. And last year we did we helped sponsor their Super Hole series, which is a pro-am, like a celebrity pro-am series that they put on ESPN. And that was just so deeply memorable and interesting because we were, working with celebrities playing cornhole and creating really, really interesting content with them. And, it was a fun time.
That's awesome. Is there anything, as we start to get towards your shift to the client side, the brand side, as you look back your time in the agency world, is there anything that surprised you? Anything you look back and you're like, this is something that surprised me. This is something that, the good, the bad, the ugly, and even lessons, because I'm just kind of curious what your take was.
Yeah.
Things you liked, you didn't like.
And this is always coming with the benefit of hindsight.
Yeah.
Based on where I am now, it's kind of amazing to me how little I knew about my client's business when I was in the agency side. I mean, when I was there, I thought I knew so much. Like I thought I could, and part of that is because you do know the most of everybody that's at your agency,
right?
For sure. But I wasn't really even scratching the surface. And sometimes I think, or at least I look back and I or even in conversations we had with creative agencies to this day, I sometimes think agencies forget clients and the businesses that they work for are, kind of locked in a complex web of stakeholders. There's a diversity of challenges. Creative product is so much less in their mind's eye, especially when you're working. There's so many issues that they have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. And so, I think about all of that complexity. And then I think about me as an account manager working on the Evinrude business and thinking that I knew everything. And I didn't. I definitely didn't. So I think there's just an interesting little bit of hindsight there that I take into account and that I think about when I work with agencies and sort of what our expectations are for them and what they know about us.
Marc, if I could, let's just hang on that for a minute because I'm just fascinated. I mean, you've got a really interesting perspective. You've been able to straddle two worlds that are, there's definitely a Venn diagram, but they are very, very unique. Just talk a little bit more about like, when you're at the agency and you're trying to get a client to do something and it's like, man, why can't I get him to do this? Or why can't I get her to do this? Or why can't we move it in this direction? And then you get over to the client side. It's like, Yeah, that's why I couldn't get it. Talk about those, some of those key differences that, only someone who has gone through what you've gone through could really understand it.
Well, I think from an account management point of view, you're the person who's tasked with trying to grow the revenue of your company. That's kind of what your job is.
Yep.
You're the representative of the client to the agency and vice versa. But you're there to try and grow revenue for your business. And so when you can find a situation where you can increase your agency's revenue and at the same time help the business of your client, I mean, that is a win-win in the eyes of an account management. And when it's a win-win, why wouldn't it be a win-win for everybody else?
Right.
But essentially, when you approach a client with that, you have to remember that what might be a win for them may be 20th in their ranking of potential wins.
Yeah.
Mere changes to how we restructure our pricing and promotional calendar could be more valuable than the creative idea that your agency had that Friday afternoon. But it might also come with the challenges of trying to work with a retailer whose expectations are different.
How many times have we asked? First of all, that was a loaded answer in a good way. You sandwiched a lot into that one, and I'm serious. That was great. Pat, how many times have we asked the question to guests, especially on the client side? Where are agencies winning? Where are they losing? What are they not doing? What should they be doing right? And Mark, you kind of got into it. There were kind of some key big nuggets that pulled, and one of them, was just like you don't understand the client well enough. And I'm sure there's some situations where they can get up to speed, or maybe there's some extra elbow grease they can be doing. In some cases, you never will be able to, but that's a big lesson where it's kind of like, if you think you know the client, if you're going into a new business pitch, or if you are working with a current client right now and you think you understand, let's maybe say you understand a fraction. So what is it that you're going to do to kind of fill the gap? That's kind of a key takeaway. Let's turn the chapter a little bit here. So obviously you move on to the brand side, the client side. So two things. One, why did you make the switch? Two, what is it that you're doing? Let's just get it out there. Just explain for folks, what is it you do? Actually, and then there's three. Why, what you're doing, and why Johnsonville?
I ate Johnsonville brats since I was a little kid. I don't think I was alive for Charlie Murphy, but I do know of it. But it was always something to me that I felt like I appreciated their position as a brand. I appreciated the irreverence they looked at advertising. And I always wanted to work with my friend. So it was a kind of a 3-win thing for me. And yeah, as it relates to what I do now, I coach our marketing communications team. Coach is the word Johnsonville uses for supervisor or boss. So I coach, sorry if you hear that, that's my 2-year-old. So I coach our marketing communications team, and that comprises of working with our creative agencies, working with our media agencies, developing communications plans that reflect the strategy of our brand management team. And yeah, working with a lot of really smart, talented people.
Hey, Mark, man, this is so good. Thanks so much for being on, man. I just got a million questions. I could keep going on and on. So,
well, you guys live close to each other, so when this is done,
maybe we just keep the beer going. Maybe we just keep rolling. Mark,
come on by. You just might have to, manage a 2-year-old while you're at it.
No problem.
Okay.
No problem.
But he does have good IPA.
Yeah. Mark, when you're now on the client side, now you're looking at agencies, what impresses you about agencies? Like, what do you look for? What do you listen for? What are you trying to get? To your point, like, everybody's going to come across and go, hey, we got insights for your business. Yep. Okay. Check. Right. And as we just talked about, you can kind of understand things, but you really don't. You're not going to know the nitty gritty. That's okay. Yeah. We're right. But what are you looking for? What are things that impress you? And maybe too, what has changed about your impression of like when you first got to Johnsonville and were working with agencies? Did you look at it through a certain lens that way? And now that you're a little bit further down your career path, it's like, now I kind of want this.
Yeah,
there's a lot there, man. But
no, it's a great question.
I'm going.
Yeah, it's funny because you mentioned, hey, we've got these consumer insights for you, and we've been on the receiving end of that, where we get agencies that give us strong consumer insights. Most CPGs have consumer insights people. And so we have a department of people. It's two, but it's still a department in our eyes.
Right.
That their whole job is telling
That's all
us
they do.
about
Yep.
about what's the consumer thinking. And it starts from what's the preferred type of sausage for this type of consumer, but it can go as big as what are the larger macro trends that are affecting our business over the next decade.
Right.
And that team is instrumental for us in helping us better understand and craft strategy for the business, for the short term and the long term. So as it relates to, to that, sometimes it's hard for we sort of get those insights from other agencies, and sometimes we roll our eyes a bit, for right, wrong, or indifferent. Sometimes we do roll our eyes to it, but where I think agencies can really help us, I mean, we are deeply entrenched in the sausage business, and that is a jungle in a lot of ways for us, where it's hard for us to get out of explaining this to an average consumer without getting into the weeds of of this. And we sometimes forget that people only eat sausage 5 to 10 times a year. And in some cases it's a lot less than that. And so people do not think about sausage, not even in the same way they think about chicken or beef or fish. They just don't think about it. And so how can we creatively remind them that sausage exists? We tend to think that, oh, we live in Johnsonville, Wisconsin. We serve our award-winning, world-famous bratwurst. Naturally, we're going to look at the world with sausage-colored lenses, and we're going to forget that the average person does not. And so it's always something we need a creative team to shake us out of our stupor on stuff like that.
Mark, how competitive is this industry? I mean, when you came in, it's obviously the sausage industry, however you coin it. I mean, what is the landscape like? I mean, is it just you've got the top big players that you're going to think of, and then from there, it's like you've got a lot of tier two. Just paint the picture of what it's like.
Yeah, there's some. It's definitely a competitive business, of course, like most are, especially in CPG, with a variety of threats. Some of them a lot bigger than others, some of them a lot smaller, and then there's misconceptions about what's most important from an outsider's perspective. We are a large sausage company. We are definitely the largest company that is solely dedicated to sausage.
Talk to us a little bit about what you stepped into in terms of, how has the face and the voice, if you will, let's just break it down, that evolved a little bit since, because that's a big part of, there's obviously the product, but there's also the brand and the Johnsonville way, or I think is that what you call it, the Johnsonville way? I was looking at it. That speaks a lot to your DNA and the soul. Talk to us a little bit about the brand.
Yeah. Well, the brand was, has started by a family, the Stayer family. Ralph F. Stayer started the company in 1945. It was a butcher shop in Johnsonville, Wisconsin, which is a real town with 25 buildings. The old butcher shop is not there anymore, but it's now our smoking plant. And he handed the business down to his son, Ralph C., who's still involved in the business. He still sits in all the board meetings and still comes around and makes sure that we're keeping ourselves diligent and selling more sausage. Every now and again, he comes up from Florida and keeps us in check. And yeah, it's a wonderful story of a family-owned business, and it continues to be owned and operated by the Stayer family. Which is really great for us, is we don't really have a lot of those pressures that publicly traded companies would have. And yeah, the history of the company from a marketing standpoint, you go back to the Charlie Murphy ad, and it's a history of understanding the value of brand building and having a message that is unique unto itself. And we're a company that is only focused on making sausage, and that is inherently interesting.
Are you watching even just like a football game, and sometimes during the pregame, they'll kind of go to the parking lot and, the word brat will come up, and it's all of a sudden it's like, it'll be like a foreign word, like brat, never had one. So you're right, Mark. It's like, you have to kind of, it's a great example. You got to take yourself out of this inner world that we're so isolated in, and living in Wisconsin, it just seems like, of course, but I guess when you're dealing with other audiences in other regions, other parts, you got your work cut out for you.
Yeah, we do, for sure.
Hey, Mark, what, oh, go ahead, Kurt.
No, please.
Mark, I want to get into this topic a little bit as well, and just to kind of close the book on the agency type of thing is two things. Kurt and I have experienced this from talking to a lot of guests when it comes to agencies and clients' expectations of agencies right now, and that is, if you're going fast, you got to go faster.
Hmm.
And I'm wondering, is that the same? What is that something that you're seeing as well? That's one. Part two is this: I would say before COVID, this was definitely a trend. I think COVID put the brakes on it a little bit, but I do anticipate it picking up again now that we're, kind of putting that behind us. And that is more and more companies of all sizes taking things in-house,
Mm-hmm.
right? Taking in by things, I mean, like the kind of the Marcom, function for a lot of stuff, taking it in-house. I'd like to get your take on both of those.
Okay. So let's start with, what was the first part, Pat?
The first one was about speed. And it just seems like agencies are the current demand from clients is, I'm just using an example here. If it took you 3 weeks to get a brief done, you know what? I need it done in 3 days.
Yeah.
Hey, if it took you 6 months to get like a full, plan in place and start executing a campaign, what does the 1 month plan look like? Right.
Yeah.
We don't have time anymore.
Yeah.
You see that on your side?
So you certainly, I think you're going to get a little bit of a different lens for me because I've been there. And so I naturally understand that the people who haven't been in the agency world may not see the less reasonable aspects of client expectations and management. So I try to keep every request I make as reasonable as possible.
Yeah.
And I try to make sure that there's honesty and realism in the responses. And look, this is going to sound a little philosophical, but we're just selling sausage here. So there's always expectations, and there's about meeting some of those expectations. And if they're communicated well, it shouldn't be an issue with the agency to be able to deliver. But at the same time, I'm not going to lose my mind if we can't have something that's to perfection that required more time to make it perfect. So I think I like to look at, I think my answer to your question is, it's always important to be reasonable first before you levy unrealistic expectations.
Gotcha.
And communication is, of course, the key of that. Which kind of comes back to a little bit of the challenges that clients tend to deal with, is that they don't think about agency expectations as much as the agency might. And so ensuring that there's clear communication on behalf of the client is also very, very important.
We are hearing this, Mark. We've heard it like just from so many that we've had on the podcast, and that is the demand to move with speed. And granted, it might have been different agencies or a different client perspective, but and I will say, we see it. We see it and we feel it. It's like faster, better, cheaper. You got to move. Gone are the days when hey, we're gonna dream up a car ad, and go and just dream it up, and you've got months and months and months. Yeah. Now the pressure is unbelievable. I liked your answer too. I like where you're going with how to be a good client, and I think the thing we're seeing more and more too, and it's probably not just us, it's just all over. Mark, I'm sure you've seen this as well. Where the best successes come is when that wall between agency and client become less built. When it becomes more of an extension of, when it becomes more of a partnership. I even try to stay away from the word client. I really do. I've been pushing myself over the years. I don't look at it, it's a partnership, and where I've seen at least my best successes, and maybe the agencies I've worked with, whether it's Celtic or other agencies, when you have that true partnership, good things are going to happen. It's a marathon, it really is. And that marathon can be grueling and it can suck. But when you're in the trenches with people that you like, you trust, you not always agree with, you're going to get some good results and some good ideation is going to happen. So, yeah, I think it's definitely some lessons there. So Mark, I did have this. I wanted to share this with you, and I know you are you appreciate advertising and all things brand, but I did want to ask you. It's like, so we've talked about your agency life. We've talked about life at Johnsonville. Everything is fantastic. I know you love Johnsonville, and I think it's a cool brand, but I'm curious. So let's just kind of say if we could clean the plate a little bit, clean the canvas, and Marc Bennett gets to say, you know what? I'm going on a 2-week advertising vacation, as in I'm going to work somewhere for 2 weeks or a month. What's something out there where either you would just love to take a shot at it? It's like, oh gosh, if I could have a month, I would love to work on this brand or be a part of this project or fix something that is just grinding me. It just drives me nuts because I see the brand doing this. I mean, do you have any wants out there?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to sit in a room with the Liquid Death marketing team and just I just want to listen, because my hunch is it's easy. It's easy and it's fun. And I think that's sort of what I think marketing really, really could be. I look at them as sort of the ideal in modern day marketing. They've figured out exactly what they are and what they're not, which is probably the hardest work that they've ever done. And ever since they figured that out, everything comes easier. And I think that's probably what we need to strive to, and what we need to get really, really good at is understanding who we are, what we're not, and what does that mean for the consumer, and then having fun as a result of it. Which is, the account manager side of me looks at the briefing process as being the most essential part in developing any new work. And if you aren't really aligned to a really, really tight brief, then you're not going to have the fun that you want to have afterwards. And I think that company figured out what their brief was, and then they were ready to go. And ever since then, it's just made more and more sense for them. And the results so speak for themselves. So yeah, if I could take a 2-week sabbatical, I'd go hang out in the meeting rooms at Liquid Death for sure.
That's awesome. Mark, in looking back, any what ifs? Did you turn left when you should have turned right? Turned right when you should have turned left? Any do-overs? Any retakes from Marc Bennett? Any lessons looking back? And now I'm not trying to dig deep or come up with dirt, but I'm just like, any things you've learned, like, oh gosh, I wish I could do this one over. Or
I mean, I don't this wouldn't be a firm regret. I wish I could have gotten a little bit more experience in the new business side. I didn't get enough of that, and I didn't get enough of that process, which is a slightly different process than the traditional, making new creative work. So I think if I would have been at CK a few more years, I would have got it. But I couldn't pass up the opportunity. And, you guys know this, at life stages, you look at more than just what's in your personal life and your professional life. And then you look at the people around you. And at that time, I was ready to have a family, and we made the right choice. So I have no regrets of making the choice when I did, but that's certainly what I wish I could have done more of.
That's awesome. Yeah. So Mark, as we kind of come to a wrap here, and we ask the same question to all of our guests, I mean, what is it that we didn't touch on? Any question you wish we would have asked you? Anything that you want to plug? Anything that you want to say? The final word always goes to guests, as it should be. So this is your moment, Mark.
This is probably the one area I didn't actually prepare anything.
Make something up. I'm sure you can do that, or don't. That's okay. But the final word is yours.
The final word is mine. Well, let me just say it was a pleasure to speak with the two of you. Let's not be strangers, since we happen to live in the same zip code.
Thanks for being on the pod. I love the product.
Thank you.
My fave, hands down, of Johnsonville is the brats are great. My fave is the hot Italian sausage. I can't get enough of it.
It's on the Mount Rushmore.
Yeah.
There is a Mount Rushmore of Johnsonville. It's got original brat, it's got hot Italian, it's got bulk summer sausage, which is the one on the string that you can hang up. And it's probably got probably better with cheddar at this point, at least in my eyes, if you cook it properly. That is fantastic stuff. So yeah, you're on the right track. You're living right, Pat.
Well, I will say too, thank you, Mark. It was a pleasure to have you on. I do appreciate your time. It was great to get you on here. I agree. Let's not be strangers. He's right. We're talking Zipco blocks. So I'll tell you what, on the 4th of July, when I come marching around sweating, I expect to see you on the corner of Woodruff and Chateau, and you better have one of those cold beers waiting for me. I'm going to be looking for you. But all kidding aside, it was great to have you on. I'm looking forward to staying in touch with you. And as Mark said, hit him up on LinkedIn. He's a great guy to connect with, smart individual, good person, and absolutely check out Johnsonville products at your store. Look them up online. We'll put it all in the post copy. It's a great brand with a great story, and I'm glad we were able to learn more about it. So till next time, this has been Over a Pint with Marc Bennett. Cheers.